Welcome to Love in All Its Forms, our Valentine's Week Wellbeing series here on Global Village Media. And now today we're going to be talking about how relationship patterns shape mental health across generations. Now, throughout this series, we've been exploring love beyond romance. We've been looking at how love shows up in our families, in our communication, in our boundaries, and the emotional environments that we grow up in. Because love isn't only something that we feel, it's something that we learn, we model, and we pass it on. So, as I said, today's conversation, it focuses on a powerful but often overlooked question. And that question is, how do relationship patterns and parenting shape mental health across generations? From the way conflict is handled at home to how affection, discipline, and emotional safety are expressed. These early experiences quietly influence how we love, trust, communicate, and cope well into adulthood. They shape what feels normal, what feels safe, and what we believe relationships are supposed to look like. So, as part of our Valentine's Week reflections, this conversation invites us to think about love, not just as romance, but as legacy. The emotional patterns that we inherit, the ones that we repeat, and the ones that we have the opportunity to change. And to help us make sense of all of this, I'm joined today by a very special guest, Dr. Shila Patel. Good afternoon, Dr. Shila.
Thank you so much, Charles, for inviting me.
Thank you so much. So let me just give you a proper introduction, just to introduce you to the viewers. So, Dr. Patel is a former adult and child psychiatrist. She's practiced for over 25 years, supporting both adults and children. During the pandemic, with mental health challenges rising, she went in to write 3 books to help people recognize unhealthy patterns, to take responsibility for healing, and change the legacy for future generations, with a particular focus on healthy relationship and parenting. So, Dr. Sheila, it's a pleasure to work. It's a pleasure having you on this show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles.
Good stuff. Now, let's warm things up real quickly with my this or that round. Okay, instinctive answers, no overthinking. Maybe if you want to, just a quick short line on why. Okay, so the first one is what children see or what children are told.
Children learn by seeing. They don't learn by what you should do. And that is one of the paramount mistakes that parents make because they always say, I tell you, and that is why you do that. And then they act totally different. And so then the kids are really conflicted in, do I behave like my parents are behaving or do I behave like what they tell me to behave? Very important distinction there, Charles.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. Next one, consistent emotional safety or occasional grand gestures.
No, I don't believe in occasional grand gestures. You have to have consistent messages and consistent behaviors. And you have to model the right things for the children. And that is why I always say that in a lot of my parenting talks, I talk about it is so important to model the right things for your kids. And it has to be consistent.
Consistency. Okay, so consistent emotional safety. Thank you. Next one, repair after conflict or avoiding conflict altogether.
No, conflicts you cannot avoid in this life. It doesn't matter who you are with. It's with your significant other, with children, with your boss, with your colleagues, with your neighbor. You're always going to have conflicts. But the important thing is, how do you resolve them?
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. So healthy conflicts, healthy and good. Being respected or being feared as a parent.
I think that you have to have respect more than fear.
Mm,
Because if
mm,
you respect the child, then the child is going to respect you. It's like
yeah,
even when we say with adults, respect goes both ways.
yeah, absolutely.
So just if the child is just fearful, they're
Mm,
going to hide things from you. They're not going to
mm,
show you exactly what's
mhm,
going on with
mhm,
them.
mm,
And
mhm.
so you really have to um, focus on respect and talking and being honest.
Yeah, thank you. Talking about feelings or showing love through actions.
I think you have to show feelings through actions
Mhm,
because just saying I love you has very little meaning, especially in this day and age when you see
mm,
the
mm,
divorce rate skyrocketing and how people can be so much in love and then the
mm,
next minute, they divorce and they hate each other.
mm,
So,
mm,
no,
mm,
it has
mm.
to be through consistent actions.
Good, thank you. Breaking cycles intentionally or doing what was modeled to you.
You have to understand why these patterns are recurring. You
Mm,
have to break the models. You have to be responsible for
mm,
making conscious decisions that these patterns are dysfunctional. And
mm,
if they are
mm.
dysfunctional for you, then you want to break them.
Absolutely. Good, thank you. Final one, passing on values or passing on emotional skills.
You have to pass on emotional skills because you have to understand why certain behaviors follow certain emotions.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to not only show the children, but also demonstrate what is normal and what is not.
Okay, good. Thank you so much for that. A lot of your answers were not this or that. They were somewhere in between. But yeah, we got the knowledge behind the answers, so that was very, very beneficial. Thank you for that, Dr. Sheila. Okay, so let me start by asking you. Now, you've seen people at various stages of life in your career. You've worked for over 25 years with children and adults. So when you think about love, what have you learned about how it shapes mental health across a lifetime?
This is a subject real dear and close to my heart because one
Mm,
of the things that I have learned and seen through all my career is that children, depending on whether they're loved or not, whether
mm,
they are shown affection or not,
mm,
whether they have been able to experience some joy in their lives,
mm,
is how and what they function in their adult life and
mm,
how they go about dealing with issues, not only in their own relationships, but also outside of relationships.
mm,
So it's very, very important that as a young child, they have a stable family situation. They
mhm,
have parents that are going to be loving and caring. That doesn't mean that the kid gets everything that they want, because
mhm,
that's
mhm, mhm.
another whole parameter that we're dealing with right
Yeah,
now, where the
yeah, yeah.
parents want to be friends, they don't want to be
Mhm,
parents.
mm,
And
mm,
you
mm,
really
mm.
have to be parents and not just friends. But
Yeah.
it has to be a loving environment for them to become healthy individuals as adults.
Mm, mm. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I've often heard people say, maybe people who had bad childhoods or childhoods that weren't quite positive, and you often hear people say, "I don't want to be like my parents." And then all of a sudden, the same cycles are repeating. They're repeating themselves. So why do certain patterns, why they still repeat, even when they're so not intended?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, that kids
Mm,
learn, and what's ingrained into you is what you see, not
mm,
what you
mm,
hear.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so that is why when you see parents fighting or not resolving conflicts, that's what you're learning is this is how people behave. And sadly, even though in your mind, you know that this is not right,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
emotionally, that is what has been ingrained into you. That
Ingrained
is
in.
what the circuitry in your brain has been focused on. And so what happens is, sadly, if you don't make a conscious decision to break those circuits, you're going
Yeah,
to spout off and you're going to behave the same way as what you experienced growing
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Does
yeah,
that
yeah.
make sense?
But yeah, yes, it does exactly. It's that experience, and maybe in your experience, what are some of the most common emotional patterns that you've seen repeating themselves across generations?
Well, I think when you talk about, let's take an example of a
Mm,
child that comes from a divorced family.
hmm
So what they experience is either parents are going to be loving towards each other even after the divorce, or they're
mm,
going to be a lot of anger and frustration.
right.
So what does the child model on? Do they model on trying to get along with people
Mm,
that they
mm,
disagree with and
hmm
cannot live
hmm
together, or do they portray anger and frustration every time something doesn't agree with them?
Yeah, yeah,
Alcoholism is another one that is so typical, or
mm,
somebody that whose father was either an alcoholic or drug
mm,
user, or the mother might have been an alcoholic. And sadly, that is a crutch that the kids see their parents using growing
yeah,
up. And so
yeah,
what happens is as they get older, when they're frustrated, they can't
yeah,
deal with
yeah,
something. The easiest thing for them to do is model after what they had seen growing up. And
yeah.
so those are a couple of major issues. And again, if there's some, say, physical abuse
hmm
or mental abuse where, the father was belittling the mother or abusing the mother physically, striking out with the children as well,
Yeah,
then when the children grow up, when they become parents themselves, that's what they're going to model. So those
yeah,
are
yeah,
three of the very major
mm,
patterns that we
yeah,
see
mm,
from children as
yeah.
they grow into
Mm,
adults.
Yeah, makes sense. And I'm guessing that sometimes maybe the emotional patterns might be quite harder to spot than the obvious behavior patterns.
Absolutely, because
Yeah,
you don't really you may get angry,
yeah.
but that you don't understand the effect it has on the other person.
Mm,
When
mhm,
you're physically lashing out, then you see the physical damage, but
mm.
emotionally, and that's why people always say words hurt a lot more
They
than
do, yeah.
physical abuse.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for that clarification. So let's look at emotional safety. First of all, can you please describe that phrase, emotional safety? What does it mean?
It means where a child is able to express themselves without any form of retaliation,
Mm,
where the child can ask for what their needs are without being knocked down.
mm,
The child has to emotionally feel safe in that they can really be themselves rather than being fearful that if they say something or they
mm,
act in a certain way,
yeah.
then they're going to meet with some really harsh feedback.
Absolutely. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Okay, good. And then still talking about emotional safety then, what are some of the quiet signs that a home is emotionally unsafe, even if there's no obvious chaos or maybe no big incident within that household?
Are you mainly, when you talk about children and
Mm,
emotional safe, unstable homes,
yeah.
the child is going to be very quiet. They're
Mm,
not going to
mm,
be expressing themselves
mhm,
either in the home or at school. They're not going to socialize easily. They're gonna
yeah,
have, but
yeah.
there's always this fear, or they look scared, or they're skittish, or
Mm,
some
mm,
of them may be labeled as introverted, or they may be
mm,
labeled as just not very outgoing. And
mhm,
those are real red flags as to trying to understand what's happening with the child. Because when you see most children playing outside, they're happy, they're jumping around, they're
yeah.
getting involved, they're,
Mhm,
um, it's easy for them to ask for something. But these
yeah.
kids, they will not reach out
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
to adults or to other children. And
Mm,
those are the red flags you have to pay attention to. They may
okay.
function really well in their schoolwork because that's something that may be an escape and something that's demanded of them
Mm,
by their
mm,
parent.
mm, mm.
So don't just look at how they're functioning in their schoolwork, but
Mm.
look at the whole parameter of how
Right.
their other behaviors are.
Yeah, absolutely good. And let's bring adults also into that context of emotional safety. What does it look like for couples in a relationship?
Again, we always talk about how women are
Mm.
abused
Yeah,
and
yeah.
men, being the aggressor, but there are lots of circumstances where the men are also
Hmm.
abused, and
Hmm. Hmm.
women
Hmm.
tend to run up, financial bills. And again, you have to look at what is the level of communication between the two of them? Are
Yeah,
they,
yeah, yeah.
again, is the woman, quiet? Does she look like she's not able to express herself? Does she have social friends?
Hmm.
Same thing with the men. That are they always feeling very anxious? Are they worried about their finances? Are they, generally, men will not talk about being physically abused by women because then they're
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
as sissies
yeah,
or,
yeah, yeah.
not standing up to
Hmm.
being manly. And really, in my experience, men have had more issues with
Mm.
coming forth and not talking about this abuse.
Hmm.
Women, it's
Hmm.
easier for them. And women tend to talk to other women as well. But
Yeah, yeah.
again, when you say an unstable emotional situation at home,
Mm. Hmm. Hmm.
definitely can affect both the couple.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. All right, good. At least that paints a clear picture of what emotional safety should look like within a household, within a family, in everyday behavior and language. So thank you for that. So moving on, how do couples handle conflict, or how couples handle conflict often becomes the blueprint, isn't it, for the child,
Right, right.
for love. So what do you see in practice, and what should parents know about arguing, about silence, about tension in front of children?
It's not going to be avoidable. Let's put it
Mm.
this way, because we're all
Hmm.
humans and we
Yeah,
all spout off things and we all react.
yeah.
But one of the things that the parents need to make a conscious decision is how are they going to handle conflicts?
Mm.
Like I said, everybody has conflicts.
Yeah.
So one of the things is both the parents need to learn to take a time out for themselves so
Hmm.
that they don't say things in front of the children. The other thing is that it's okay to send the child out of the room and say, look, I and mom need to talk, or I and dad need to talk. And let's be honest with the couple that they
Mm.
need to honestly talk about what's going on. Because one of the
Mm.
things is that a lot of things are said in anger and reacted in anger. So once you give
Mm.
yourself a little time out to calm down,
Mm.
the other thing is also, like you say, children are going to see parents
Yeah.
having conflicts.
Mm.
So when they see the parents are able to honestly talk with each other and that they're not going to hate each other, so
Mm.
make sure that when the parents are making up or hugging each other or saying sorry, because one of the major things that I find
Mm.
is one or the other one in the couple always has difficulty acknowledging that they made a mistake and saying sorry. So when they
Mhm.
see the parents actually
Straightforward.
admitting that,
Mm.
hey, I was wrong and I'm sorry, and
Mm. Mm.
let's move past this, then the kids are going to be able to understand that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes because,
Mm.
like I said, you cannot tell children that you're going to go through life without conflicts. That's
Of
not
course.
reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, true, 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 absolutely. How about silence? Yeah, how does that play out?
Well,
Where there's a lot of
again,
silence instead of the loud conflict.
again,
Yeah.
there's a time and a place for it. You can be silent in the bedroom with each other.
There you go. Yeah, yeah.
You can
Mm.
show your distance from each other, but in
Mm.
front
Mm.
of the kids, let's try and
Yeah,
act normal. It's like, say,
absolutely.
you're going to have a party, a dinner
Mm.
party, and you and
Mhm.
your spouse had a major conflict just before the dinner party. Well,
Mm.
you're not going to be silent with each other during the party,
You
so
try
you
not to.
you you, you
Yeah.
act normal. You talk to each other, but once the party's over, then you can debate and talk and resolve
Mm.
the conflict. So
Yeah.
the same thing with kids.
Excellent, good, good. And still on that point of conflict, let's look at the difference between maybe a normal disagreement and then a conflict that might leave an emotional scar, within the household, within the children or other adults within the relationship.
Well, normal conflicts is basically something that's resolved by one person admitting or talking about it and making some resolutions about it.
Okay.
Emotional scarring conflicts are more where you're going to see the other one either physically strike out or belittling the other person
Mm,
or shutting the other person up, not
yeah.
wanting to listen to them, demanding that they're the ones that are right,
Mm,
that the other one has no place to say anything. And
yeah.
some of the things that the women come up with is that the men will say, well, I go out and earn the money and I should be the one who dictates how it should be spent.
Mm,
Well, you're in a marriage, you're in a family, everybody, both the couple have a say so.
mm,
And when one person is getting out of hand, then it's really the other person needs to draw that person back to the
yeah.
midline.
Mm,
And
mm,
so emotional scarring just occurs when we've talked about how, kids are exposed to, or even the spouses are exposed to
yeah.
either
Yeah.
physical aggression or
Mm,
really not having the ability to express themselves, because
mhm,
that's
mhm,
what healthy relationships is about, is that
yeah.
you both are able to say something logically without putting the other one down, and understanding that both, and that comes back to respect, that you have to
Yeah.
respect each other so that you both
Mm,
have a right to say things. You may not always be right, but
yeah.
you should have the ability to be able to say things, and
Mm,
then the other
mm,
one can correct you, and you should have the ability to listen and comprehend as well when
yeah.
you're out of line.
Mm, okay, absolutely. That's well clarified. Good, thank you. So you've established that we can't avoid conflict; they're unavoidable. So, but
Right.
after a painful moment, maybe shouting, maybe harsh words, or the silent treatment, what does repair then look like in a family? Healthy repair. What does it look like?
Well, again, one of the things that has to happen is that everybody should have the ability to talk to each other.
Yeah.
When there is a conflict, both sides need to say what they're feeling and what they were thinking.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then what they need to do is also come to some kind of decision. Okay, so when we come across the same situation next time, this is
Mm,
how we'll deal with it. The other thing is that there have to be some kind of physical makeup, like whether it's a hug or holding hands or letting the children know that parents are not going to split up because of this really
yeah.
harsh conflict that
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
kids. And the other thing also with the kids, if this happens in front of the children are very self-centered, so they think that they are the responsible for whatever the
Mm,
parents are
mm, mm,
going through.
mm, mm,
and
mm,
and one of the major things I always used to tell parents is be honest with the kids, because they
mm.
may be fighting about finances, they
Yeah.
may be
Yeah.
fighting about an affair, they may be
Yeah. Yeah.
fighting about conflict at work, they may be
Mm, mm,
fighting about whether one spouse needs to work or not. It's
mm.
nothing to do with the children, but the
Absolutely.
children perceive it as it being their fault.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
you have to clarify that for the
Mm,
children
mhm,
before
mhm,
it
mhm.
starts leaving, before the child keeps feeling like all the
Yeah.
conflicts that are happening is because of them.
Is their faults. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. And what is something that you wish more adults understood about apology and about accountability?
Well, one of the things that you always want
Mm,
most adults to understand is that it's okay to say you're wrong, because a lot of
mm,
people have such big egos that they don't want to admit that they're wrong. They
mm,
don't want to say sorry. And there's nothing belittling about admitting that you're wrong and you're sorry and that you make mistakes. We are all humans, like I said, we all make mistakes. And
absolutely.
if people could just understand that and
Mm,
be ready to say and apologize and be respectful. And the other thing that adults absolutely need to do is listen to
mm,
each other. A
mm.
lot of times men will say, enough, I don't want to hear anymore. And women tend to speak a lot more than they should. So maybe they need to have like timeout.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I've heard
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
Or no, I haven't finished my say so. And can
Mm,
you give
mm,
me 2 more minutes? and then I won't say anything anymore.
Good, good. That's really important. So, and that's because apology, it doesn't weaken a person's authority, does it? It
No,
doesn't
it does
diminish.
not. Not
No,
at
like you
all.
said, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Good, thank you. So let's talk about your books. So, because you wrote your books because you felt that people needed to recognize problems
Right.
and take responsibility for healing. So, please, what does health responsibility look like without shame or without self-blame?
Well, responsibility is really understanding what is important to you,
Mm,
what kind of behaviors are important to you, what is it that, whether what you see the neighbor doing or your family doing or the politicians doing,
mm,
what is right for the community. And the whole premise of the books was not only just looking at yourself, your family, your, like you say, the generational thing, what you're doing with your kids, but
mhm,
also
mhm.
in the community. And we are not, human beings were not meant to be islands. And
Yeah.
so we have a responsibility to not only behave and do the right things for ourselves, but
Mm,
for those close to us and then those around us. And my father had always done so much for other people outside of the family. And I
mhm,
think
mhm,
that's why I'm so passionate about
mm,
when
mm.
I finished my practice that I was
Yeah.
treating patients one on one. And the whole
Mm,
idea of the books was that if anybody wants direction, if anybody wants to understand how to improve their lives
yeah.
and be more outgoing and responsible and think outside of themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
then
Yeah.
that's why the books came about.
Okay. Wonderful. And please, share with people where they can get the books from, if they wanted to order a book, copy of your books.
You can go to my website, which is really
Okay.
easy, www.
Hmm.
Sorry, Dr. Sheila Patel. So they're all lowercase dr, but Sheila is spelled Shila, Patel, Patel.com. And if they have difficulty getting on my website, then just go to Amazon and look up books by Dr. Sheila Patel, MD, and all the three books will show up. They'll have information about what's in them, which book relates more to them, which one doesn't. So that'd be easy.
Good. And that's just to remember, and that's Sheila with Shila.
That's right.
And just quick, just a follow up on that. So, how do people move on from this happened to me to how I can change what happens next?
One, they have to have a conscious understanding of
Mm,
what is dysfunctional in their life.
okay.
Because if you don't understand yourself, that
Mm,
you're repeating the patterns, that this is
mm,
not right, that
hmm.
this is what people are saying to me or about me that is not right. And
Right.
it has to affect you enough that you want to make the change, because it's not enough for somebody else to say, hey, you need to stop doing this, or you need to stop.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
to come from inside you. It has to
Mm,
bother
hmm.
you enough that you
Mm,
want to change. So that's why I talk about personal responsibility. In
yeah.
fact, I started writing the books during the Me Too movement, and I
Yeah.
got really tired of women just jumping on the bandwagon and
Hmm,
saying,
hmm.
me too, me too.
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
of that, because
Mm,
during my 25 years, I treated so many women with sexual abuse and taking responsibility.
mm,
And let's all face what part we played in that
mm.
episode happening, and how we can uh, look at ourselves and either forgive ourselves or not teach our children to go down the same path. And so, self responsibility to me is so important, and understanding what changes you want to make, first of all, and then how to go about making those changes, how to
Yeah.
take baby steps in learning to do things a little differently. And if you
Yeah.
don't, then there are a lot of self help books out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
teach you to look at things. You have to look at things differently, because if you keep looking at things the same way, then you're going to act the same way.
The
You
same
have
way.
to look
Yeah.
at things differently.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that shift is really, really important, isn't it? Because
Right.
that shift alone could be the beginning of a generational change that we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Not only for yourself, but for, like I said, your children,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
teaching them different things. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Good. Good. Thank you. And then When you talk about changing the destiny for future generations, what's one mindset shift you believe can transform a family's future?
I guess letting go of some of the dysfunctions from your childhood, letting go of some
Mm,
of the hurts, letting go of what happened. Because, either you let the trauma of what has happened to you in your childhood or growing up years or what you saw with your parents, you can let that control you,
mm,
or you gain control and you start saying, this is not what I want to do, this is not how I want to behave. And I think that that goes a long way in not only for yourself but for future as well around
absolutely.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's important that people can begin to reflect on right away
Yeah.
to begin to make necessary changes. Yeah. So and if Valentine's Week is all about love in all its forms, what does real love look like in everyday family life, especially under stress?
Everybody is going to have a little bit of stress in life,
Of
whether
course.
it's from your
Yeah.
job or from
Mhm.
your, because let's face it, when babies are born, parents are filled with love and they think everything is going to be so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
kids act out, reality sets in, the
Mm,
finances
mm,
set in. So
mm-hmm,
you're always going to have a stressful life.
mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that if you love somebody, then you want to care about that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
caring about that person means you
Mm,
want to do the best for that person.
mm,
So you have to make conscious decisions about, like I said, kids understand when you tell them, hey, I don't have enough money to buy this $200 sneakers, but I can
mm,
buy you the $30 sneakers,
mm,
which
mm.
may not be a name brand, but they're a good make.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you just tell the kid, no, you can't have that, and they don't have an understanding. So one of the things that I always used to advocate is be honest with the children.
Mm,
they're a lot more resilient than you think they are. A lot of times when parents have health problems, they don't want to share it with the kids, thinking that the kids are going to be all scared and worried, but they are more worried about what is happening and they don't understand what is happening to the
mm.
parents. And so the honesty, open communication, and showing love and caring, I think, are the milestones that really need to be established in any family
Mm.
growing up.
And that creates that emotional safety, doesn't it?
Right.
That you've been, yeah, very good. Thank you, thank you. And if you was take one thing away from today about love, about mental well-being, what should it be?
Time decides who you meet in life,
Mm, mm, mm,
and your heart really decides who you want in your life. But it's always your behavior that will decide who is going to stay in your life. So it's a real important distinction to
that's
make.
deep. I really like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's key. That's really crucial. Please delve a little bit more into that, please.
Well,
Mm,
the main thing is
yeah,
that, a lot of people go through life and they think they're going to meet the right person.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And so what they do is they may have had opportunities to establish a relationship with somebody who didn't meet 10 out of 10 of their
yeah,
criteria. And
yeah,
so they
yeah,
let go of that person. So
yeah.
what happens is that that person never comes back in their life.
Mm,
They never
mm,
meet anybody
hmm,
else that's
hmm,
going
hmm.
to meet some of that criteria because
Yeah,
you were so stubborn and you thought I'm going to get somebody better.
better. Mm,
And in my research for why men stay single, that is the number one factor, is that men tend to look for women that are unreachable. And
mm,
so what happens is that they keep looking for somebody who's going to be better, who's going to be
mm,
better,
hmm, hmm, hmm,
instead
hmm.
of saying, hey, she would make a really good companion, and
Yeah,
maybe I
yeah.
should put myself out to make that
To
relationship
make
work.
that, yeah.
So
Awesome.
that's what I'm talking about. That time
Mm,
will dictate who you have in your life.
hmm, hmm.
And then we talk about your heart. love is supposed to be the master key to happiness. And so when everybody's in love, everybody's looking through rosy glasses, they don't pay attention to the red flags. They think everything
Mm.
is going to be so hunky-dory.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah.
in the case of women, they get involved in relationships, like I said, with alcoholic men, and they think, hey, I couldn't change my dad, but I'm going to change this man. He's going to
Yeah,
love me so much that he's going to change for me. Well, wrong. A lot of times, until unless the man wants to stop being an alcoholic, he's not going to. It
yeah,
doesn't matter
yeah,
whether he cares that much about you or not.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then your
yeah.
behaviors, if you act like a crazy person all the time and you're very demanding, and
Mm, mm,
it doesn't matter how much the other person loves you, but they're not going to
mm,
stay with you. They're not going to put up with that negative behavior. It's
absolutely.
the same thing with men. If you're going to be abusive and that's the only way you learned how to treat your women, then the woman doesn't have to put up with that. She can leave.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what I mean about that your behavior dictates who's
exactly.
going to stay in your
Yeah,
life.
absolutely. Yeah, makes. Thanks for that clarification. That I think that was a really profound and yeah, I love that. Thank you for that. And so we've talked about your books and any people particularly that you would like to draw your attention to. Maybe those books would be very beneficial to.
Like I said, I really started writing the books about the relationships because of the
Mm,
Me Too movement.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I have really explained the difference between molestation and
Mm,
abuse and your
mm, mm,
self-responsibility and
mm,
what
mm,
women can do
mm.
to, if they want to get control of their life instead of this episode control. And especially in America right now, we've got the Epstein files, and
We've got over here
that's
too.
that's dictating all of the news
Yep,
right
yep,
now.
we've got over here
And
too.
so, really, a lot
Mm,
of women could
yeah.
benefit from that first book that I divided up, saying
Mm,
Us
mm,
Unhinged. And, and it's true that an episode like that does unhinge us, and we need to learn how to get control of our lives and what we do going forward. So that's definitely one. But I tell you, who has always come back to me after
mm.
reading the books are men, because
Okay.
they have understood a lot more
Mm,
about the sexual abuse, what they're
yeah.
responsible for, what they're not
Okay.
responsible for.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also address what women need to be responsible for, because they
Mm,
cannot go, it's a free world. Yes, they talk about freedoms and everything, but they cannot go around in life dressing so scantily and not
mm.
have men, ogle them or make comments. And then women get all upset, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the man is acting out of sorts. And no, you have some responsibility in interactions as well. So that's why a lot of my books address a lot about responsibility. Then I have talked a lot about parenting. And so parents who are struggling with what to do with their kids, or how to raise confident kids, whether you should raise children, like if girls, should they be raised like boys? And my thing is, no, we have different genders,
Mm,
and women need to be taught to be women. It's sad to hear that girls these days, they don't know how to sew, they don't know, a lot of them don't know how to cook.
mm,
Yeah,
mm.
and I'm not saying that only women should sew and cook, but at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time,
yeah,
we
yeah.
should have a whole generation that doesn't know how to do that. And
Mm,
so, there are lots of parenting things in my books.
yeah, yeah,
Then I looked at the societal issues, and of course, since being in America, we've had the mass shootings, the gun
yeah, yeah,
control.
yeah, yeah.
We have issues with euthanasia,
Mm, mhm.
treating pets better than elderly parents. And so, a
Mm,
lot of the social issues. So if you are
mm,
more into the community and want to understand,
yeah, yeah.
so really there's a little bit for everybody and
Everyone.
everything.
Mm,
And so, but mainly, like I said, if people want to learn about self-responsibility and how to
mm.
function better, there's a
Mhm.
lot of information in the first two books, book one and book two.
Wonderful,
And
wonderful.
the third one is
Mm,
mainly American, which
okay.
is US fractured because of the Capitol riot, and just being really upset. And in UK as well, there's a lot of immigration stuff going on. And so I've
There
addressed a
is,
lot
there
of
is.
the
Yeah, yeah.
immigrants and
Mm,
how healthy it has been in America to have immigrants from both extremes. I
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about our yard work, our roofers, our people
Hmm.
who build roads, to the CEOs of, really successful companies like
Yeah, yeah.
Google,
Hmm.
Pepsi Cola. They're by immigrants, and
Yeah.
so you know, so I've addressed a lot of that in my
Mm.
third book as well.
Right, good stuff. And just before we begin to wrap up, share once again where your books can be ordered from.
Okay, you can go on Amazon and just put on in the search engine books by Dr. Shila Patel, MD, or go to my website, www.drshilapatel.com. And remember to spell Sheila, Shila. And that has a lot more information about me, about the books. You can read some chapters of the books. And my publisher also has some chapters of my books, so you can
Okay.
always read those before you look into wanting to expand your knowledge through the
Good,
books.
good. Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila, for being, a ton of information that you've revealed in this short time. Really appreciate your time and thank you so much. And as we come to the end of this conversation, I think it's worth pausing on a final reflection that when we're talking about love in all its forms, we're not just talking about romance or parenting in isolation. We're talking about the emotional patterns that we live in with every day, how we speak to ourselves, how we handle conflict, how safe we feel to express our needs, and how we repair things when things go wrong. And those patterns, they don't stop with us, do they? They become legacy. The way we love ourselves shapes the way we love others. The way we handle stress and it shapes the way we pass it on, like we've said, to further generations. So yeah, so thank you, Dr. Patel, for your awesome time. Please, before we do go, share one final word with my listeners, please.
Well, I really believe in good relationships. And
Mm,
one of the things that I say is that some people may be brokenhearted not because they have been hurt by somebody, but
mm,
because they never found somebody who mattered enough to hurt them. And I
mm,
hope that that makes sense, is put yourself out. And relationships and love can add so much to your life, but do it in a healthy way and find and not every person you meet is out to take advantage of you. You
mm.
know, just remember you have a lot of self-responsibility in how somebody is going to love you.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Thank you. And there's so one for everybody, isn't there? There's so one for everyone. So yeah, a big sincere thank you to Dr. Sheila Patel for sharing her wisdom, her depth, and her decades of experience with us. Thank you for helping us to understand that love is not just something that we feel, but it's something that we model, we practice, and we pass it on, often without actually realizing it. Today's discussion also reminds us that love in all its form, it includes the emotional environments that we grow up in, the way conflict is handled, the presence or absence of repair, and the messages that we absorb about safety, about worth, about belonging. I think these experiences, they don't stay in childhood, but they quietly shape how we relate as adults and how we parent the next generation. If there's one final takeaway from this conversation, it's that patterns can be changed. Awareness creates choice, and small intentional shifts in how we speak, listen, apologize, and repair can interrupt cycles that no longer serve us or those who come after us. As part of Valentine's Week, perhaps the most meaningful expression of love is this: commitment to emotional responsibility, choosing reflection over repetition, and choosing repair over silence, and compassion over blame. So, thank you everybody for joining us on this episode of Love in All Its Forms, our Valentine's Week Wellbeing series here on Global Village Media. Wherever you're listening from, take care of yourselves, and remember, the love you practice today becomes the legacy that you leave behind. And also, in a world where we could be anything that we want to be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Thank you so much and remain blessed.